In a speech that has sent shockwaves through political, economic, and social circles, former President Donald Trump unveiled his vision for a tax-free America, at least in the traditional sense. Addressing an energized crowd at a Republican issues conference in Florida, Trump declared his ambition to eliminate federal income taxes entirely, proposing instead a return to a tariff-based system that once fueled the country's growth. The bold statement, typical of Trump's disruptive style, has reignited debates over taxation, trade, and the American dream. Donald Trump began his speech with a sweeping critique of the current tax system, labeling it as broken, burdensome, and biased against the hardworking American people. He proposed dismantling it entirely, claiming it was time to return to what he described as a system that worked, back when America was great. Trump's argument leaned heavily on nostalgia for a time when tariffs, not income taxes, were the primary source of federal revenue. His rhetoric was clear. Why are we taxing our citizens when we could tax foreign companies trying to sell their goods here? Let's make America first. For real this time. The proposal outlined a plan to replace income taxes with a comprehensive tariff regime. Trump explained that this would not only eliminate the need for income taxes, but also stimulate domestic production by discouraging reliance on imported goods. The crowd cheered enthusiastically as he promised Americans would keep their entire paychecks, emphasizing, "It's your money, you earned it, and you should keep it." Historical context. A journey back to tariffs. To understand Trump's proposal, it's crucial to revisit America's economic history. Before the introduction of the federal income tax in 1913, the U.S. government relied heavily on tariffs to fund its operations. During the 19th century, import taxes accounted for nearly 90% of federal revenue. This system supported the country's development during its industrialization phase, providing funds without directly taxing citizens. The shift to income tax in the early 20th century was a response to growing governmental needs, including funding wars, infrastructure, and social programs. Critics of Trump's plan argue that the complexities of the modern economy make a tariff-based system impractical today. However, Trump and his supporters view it as a return to simplicity and self-reliance. Economic implications, the pros and cons. The economic ramifications of Trump's proposal are immense. On the surface, the elimination of federal income taxes sounds like a windfall for American workers. Imagine receiving your paycheck without the familiar deductions for federal income tax. It's an attractive prospect. Potential benefits. Increased disposable income. Workers would retain more of their earnings, potentially boosting consumer spending. Incentivize domestic production. Higher tariffs on imports could encourage American companies to manufacture goods domestically, creating jobs. Simplified tax system. The abolition of income taxes would eliminate the need for complex tax filings, reducing stress and administrative costs for individuals and businesses. Potential drawbacks. Higher consumer prices. Tariffs inevitably lead to increased costs for imported goods, which are often passed on to consumers. Trade retaliation. Other nations might impose their own tariffs on American exports, potentially sparking trade wars. Economic inequality. Wealthier individuals who spend less on imported goods might benefit disproportionately, while low- and middle-income families could feel the pinch. Economists remain divided. Some argue the plan could lead to a manufacturing revival, while others warn of inflation, disrupted supply chains, and unpredictable federal revenues. The announcement has polarized politicians along party lines. Trump loyalists within the Republican Party have hailed the proposal as visionary, framing it as a bold move to liberate Americans from the tyranny of taxation. Conversely, Democrats and even some moderate Republicans have criticized the plan as reckless and unfeasible. Senator Elizabeth Warren called it an economic disaster waiting to happen, warning that reliance on tariffs could lead to budget deficits and strain international alliances. The American public's response to Trump's proposal has been as polarized as the political landscape itself. Supporters, particularly among Trump's base, see the idea as a long-overdue correction to a tax system they perceive as overly complex and punitive. Many middle-class Americans, who often feel the brunt of income taxes, expressed enthusiasm about keeping their full paychecks. Social media platforms erupted with hashtags like #NoMoreTaxes and #AmericaFirst, signaling a groundswell of grassroots support. However, skeptics were quick to voice concerns. "This might sound great in theory," said Lisa Harper, a school teacher from Ohio, "but what happens when the price of groceries and other essentials skyrockets because of tariffs?" Concerns about inflation, economic inequality, and potential job losses in export-driven industries dominated online debates and town hall discussions. The generational divide was also evident. Younger Americans, particularly those burdened by student loans and rising living costs, welcomed the idea of no federal income taxes. Meanwhile, older generations, who have witnessed the complexities of global trade, were more apprehensive about the potential fallout from tariff-driven policies. Global trade dynamics, a double-edged sword. Trump's proposal hinges on a significant increase in tariffs on imported goods. While the idea of protecting domestic industries and creating jobs has undeniable appeal, the global trade implications are far-reaching and complex. Potential upsides. Revitalizing American manufacturing. Tariffs could make imported goods less competitive, encouraging consumers to buy American-made products. This could lead to a resurgence of industries like steel, textiles, and electronics. Trade negotiation leverage. Trump's administration has previously used tariffs as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations, notably with China and Mexico. A tariff-based revenue system could strengthen the U.S. position in future trade talks. Risks and challenges. Retaliatory tariffs. Other countries might impose their own tariffs on U.S. exports, potentially harming industries like agriculture, aerospace, and automotive manufacturing. Supply chain disruptions. Modern global supply chains are intricately linked. Higher tariffs could lead to delays and increased costs for businesses reliant on imported components. Alienation of trade partners. Countries that have long-standing trade relationships with the U.S. might view the move as protectionist, leading to strained diplomatic ties. For instance, China, a significant trading partner, has already warned of potential retaliation if the U.S. imposes steep tariffs on its goods. Similarly, European Union leaders have expressed concerns about the ripple effects on global trade. Transitioning to a tariff-based revenue system is no small feat. The legislative hurdles alone are daunting, as the repeal of federal income taxes would require significant changes to existing tax laws and the U.S. Constitution. Trump's administration would need to navigate a deeply divided Congress, where even some Republicans might balk at such a radical shift. Revenue stability. One of the biggest challenges is ensuring stable federal revenue. Tariff revenues are inherently volatile, fluctuating with trade volumes and economic conditions. This unpredictability could complicate budgeting for essential government programs like Social Security, Medicare, and defense. Administrative overhaul. The implementation of a comprehensive tariff system would require a massive overhaul of customs and border operations. Staffing, infrastructure, and technology upgrades would be necessary to handle the increased volume of import assessments and enforcement. Public services and programs. Critics argue that a tariff-based system might fall short of funding critical public services. Programs that rely heavily on federal funding, such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure development, could face significant budget cuts. Addressing these concerns would require careful planning and potentially supplementary revenue sources. Trump's vision for the future. Despite the challenges, Trump remains steadfast in his belief that this proposal is the key to America's economic resurgence. In his speeches, he paints a picture of a self-reliant nation where factories hum with activity, paychecks are untouched by federal taxes, and foreign companies pay their fair share. "Imagine a country where the government doesn't dip into your pocket every month," he said during a rally in Las Vegas. "We can fund our great nation by making others pay to access the greatest market in the world, the United States." His vision also includes significant penalties for countries engaging in unfair trade practices, such as currency manipulation or intellectual property theft. Trump has called for 100% tariffs on certain goods, such as cars manufactured outside the U.S., and a minimum 60% tariff on Chinese products. Economists remain deeply divided on the feasibility and potential outcomes of Trump's proposal. Advocates argue that a tariff-based system could reinvigorate domestic industries, reduce reliance on imports, and simplify the tax system. They point to historical examples where tariffs provided a stable revenue stream for the government. However, critics warn of significant risks. The global economy is vastly different from what it was in the 19th century, said Dr. Emily Carter, a professor of economics at Harvard University. A tariff-based system might work in theory, but in practice, it could lead to inflation, trade wars, and a host of unintended consequences. Donald Trump's proposal to eliminate federal income taxes resonates deeply with the American ethos of individualism and self-reliance. The promise of keeping one's full paycheck has been hailed by many as a step toward empowering the average citizen and reducing government overreach. However, the cultural and societal impact of such a shift deserves a closer look. The prospect of an income tax-free America has sparked enthusiasm among middle-class workers and small business owners. Many see it as a chance to take greater control over their finances and make more strategic personal investments. The simplicity of not filing annual tax returns is another appealing factor, especially for those frustrated by the complexities of the current tax system. I work hard for every dollar I earn, and I want to decide how to spend it, said Greg Simmons, a construction worker from Michigan. Trump's plan gives me that freedom. While the proposal may reduce the financial burden on individuals, it raises significant concerns about funding for social safety net programs. Income taxes currently provide the bulk of federal funding for programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Critics argue that without these revenue streams, the government might struggle to sustain such programs, leaving vulnerable populations at risk. Civil rights organizations and social justice advocates have voiced concerns about the disproportionate impact of tariff-based inflation on low-income families. The wealthiest Americans might see this as a tax cut, but for the working poor, it's a trade-off they can't afford, said Monica Alvarez, a spokesperson for the Progressive Action Network. Trump's proposal doesn't exist in a vacuum. As one of the world's largest economies, any significant shift in U.S. fiscal policy has global ramifications. The tariff-based revenue system Trump envisions could redefine America's role in the world economy, but not without challenges. The America First rhetoric that underpins Trump's plan emphasizes domestic self-reliance. By imposing higher tariffs on foreign goods, the policy aims to prioritize American industries and reduce dependency on imports. While this might appeal to nationalist sentiments, it risks alienating trade partners and allies. For instance, countries like China, Canada, and Mexico, key trading partners, might retaliate with tariffs on American exports, leading to a tit-for-tat trade war. This could harm American farmers, manufacturers, and tech companies that rely on global markets. The proposed tariff system could also put the U.S. at odds with the World Trade Organization, WTO, and existing trade agreements like the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Legal disputes and international arbitration might follow, further complicating the implementation of Trump's vision. The tax debate in historical perspective. Trump's proposal marks the latest chapter in a long-running debate about taxation in America. Throughout the nation's history, taxation has been a contentious issue, reflecting broader societal values and priorities. The early days, tariffs and independence. In the 18th and 19th centuries, tariffs were a cornerstone of U.S. economic policy. They funded government operations while protecting nascent industries from foreign competition. This system aligned with the economic philosophy of the time, which prioritized domestic growth and self-sufficiency. The Progressive Era, the birth of income tax. The introduction of federal income tax in 1913 represented a shift toward a more progressive taxation system. It was designed to ensure that the wealthiest citizens contributed a fair share to the government's growing responsibilities, including infrastructure, public education, and military defense. In the 21st century, the U.S. tax system has become increasingly complex, with income taxes serving as the primary revenue source. Debates about tax reform often revolve around finding a balance between encouraging economic growth and addressing income inequality. Trump's proposal represents a dramatic departure from this trajectory, sparking questions about whether it's a step forward or a return to outdated economic models. Even if Trump's vision garners widespread support, the road to implementation is fraught with challenges. From legislative hurdles to public buy-in, the success of the plan hinges on several critical factors. Repealing federal income taxes and introducing a tariff-based revenue system would require congressional approval. Given the current political polarization, achieving bipartisan support seems unlikely. Some moderate Republicans have already expressed reservations about the potential economic risks. Educating the public about the implications of such a fundamental change is another major hurdle. While the idea of no income taxes is appealing, many Americans remain skeptical about the trade-offs, particularly the potential for inflation and reduced funding for public services. Shifting to a tariff-based system would require significant investment in customs infrastructure and enforcement mechanisms. The U.S. would need to scale up its capacity to monitor and collect tariffs on an unprecedented scale, which could prove costly and time-consuming. As the debate over Trump's tax proposal unfolds, it has become clear that this is more than just a policy issue. It's a referendum on America's economic identity. The proposal challenges long-held assumptions about the role of government, the nature of fairness, and the balance between domestic and global priorities. For some, Trump's plan represents a bold vision for the future, one that prioritizes individual freedom and American industry. For others, it's a reckless gamble that could destabilize the economy and undermine the country's position on the global stage. To evaluate the feasibility of Donald Trump's proposal, it's helpful to examine historical and international precedents. While no country has entirely eliminated income taxes, several nations rely heavily on tariffs or alternative revenue systems, offering valuable insights into the potential outcomes of such a policy. Historical case: the U.S. tariff era, 19th century. During the 19th century, tariffs were the primary source of federal revenue in the United States. This period saw significant industrial growth, particularly in manufacturing sectors like textiles, steel, and railroads. By imposing high tariffs on imported goods, the government effectively protected domestic industries from foreign competition. However, the system also had drawbacks. Tariffs disproportionately affected agricultural regions, which relied on exporting goods like cotton and wheat. Southern states, in particular, felt burdened by the higher costs of imported goods and retaliatory tariffs on American exports. These tensions contributed to sectional divisions and, ultimately, the Civil War. Gulf states and low-tax models. Countries like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia operate without income taxes for their citizens, relying instead on revenue from oil exports and other natural resources. These nations demonstrate that alternative revenue models can work, but they depend on specific economic conditions, namely, the presence of high-value resources that can generate substantial revenue. Critics of Trump's plan point out that the U.S. does not have a comparable resource base to replace income taxes. While tariffs could provide some revenue, they are unlikely to match the scale of federal income taxes, which account for nearly half of all government revenue. The Scandinavian approach: high taxes, high benefits. In contrast, Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Denmark embrace high income taxes to fund comprehensive social welfare systems. Proponents of this model argue that it fosters economic stability, reduces inequality, and provides a safety net for all citizens. Trump's proposal represents a sharp departure from this philosophy, prioritizing individual financial freedom over collective social investment. If implemented, Trump's tariff-based system would create clear winners and losers across various sectors of the economy. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for evaluating the proposal's broader implications. Winners: manufacturing and domestic industries. Higher tariffs on imports could make American-made products more competitive, potentially leading to job growth in sectors like manufacturing, textiles, and steel. Wealthy individuals. High-income earners would benefit disproportionately from the elimination of income taxes, as they would save the most under the new system. States with diverse economies. States with strong domestic industries, like Michigan and Ohio, might see economic benefits from increased demand for locally produced goods. Losers: consumers. Higher tariffs would likely lead to increased prices for imported goods, affecting everything from electronics to clothing. Low- and middle-income households would feel this impact most acutely. Export-dependent industries, sectors like agriculture, aerospace, and technology, which rely heavily on global markets, could suffer if other countries impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports. Public services, programs funded by federal income taxes, such as Medicaid and Social Security, might face budget shortfalls, potentially leading to cuts in services. Public services and federal funding, a looming crisis? One of the most pressing concerns surrounding Trump's proposal is its impact on public services. Income taxes currently fund essential programs that touch nearly every aspect of American life. Without these revenues, the federal government would need to find alternative ways to support critical services. Social Security and Medicare. Social Security and Medicare are among the largest recipients of federal income tax revenue. Together, they provide benefits to tens of millions of Americans, including retirees, people with disabilities, and low-income families. Critics of Trump's plan warn that a tariff-based system might not generate enough revenue to sustain these programs, potentially jeopardizing benefits for vulnerable populations. Education and infrastructure. Federal funding for education, transportation, and infrastructure development also relies heavily on income taxes. Schools, highways, and public transit systems could face severe budget cuts, particularly in rural and low-income areas. Defense spending. The U.S. military, which accounts for a significant portion of federal spending, might also be affected. While Trump has promised to maintain a strong national defense, the unpredictability of tariff revenues could complicate long-term planning and budgeting. Trump's proposal has sparked intense debate within the political sphere, revealing deep divisions not only between parties but also within the Republican Party itself. Many Republicans have praised the plan as a bold, transformative vision. Prominent Trump allies, like Senator Josh Hawley and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, have framed the proposal as a return to American greatness, aligning with the America First philosophy. However, not all Republicans are on board. Moderates like Senator Susan Collins and Senator Mitt Romney have expressed skepticism, raising concerns about the potential economic fallout and the feasibility of replacing income taxes with tariffs. Democrats, predictably, have denounced the plan as reckless and regressive. Senator Bernie Sanders called it a giveaway to the wealthy, while Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez warned of the long-term consequences for low-income Americans. This isn't tax reform, it's an economic experiment that could devastate millions of lives, she said during a press conference. Trump's vision, a bold gamble. For Donald Trump, this proposal is more than just a policy idea. It's a statement of his broader vision for America. By eliminating income taxes and embracing tariffs, Trump aims to reshape the nation's economic priorities, putting the focus squarely on self-reliance and domestic production. During a rally in Pennsylvania, Trump summarized his philosophy. "We don't need to tax our people to death. We can make the world pay for the privilege of trading with us. This is how we win. This is how we make America great again." Economists from across the ideological spectrum have weighed in on Donald Trump's tax proposal, offering varied perspectives on its feasibility and potential outcomes. Their analyses highlight the complexities of transitioning to a tariff-based revenue system and the ripple effects it might create in both domestic and global markets. Supporters' perspective, economic nationalism. Proponents of Trump's plan often frame it as a return to economic nationalism, arguing that tariffs could revitalize American industries and reduce reliance on foreign goods. Dr. John Harper, an economist at the American Enterprise Institute, supports the proposal, stating, "By imposing tariffs on imports, we can protect domestic industries, incentivize local production, and create jobs. At the same time, eliminating income taxes will give consumers more purchasing power, boosting the economy from within." Supporters also argue that tariffs could serve as a strategic tool to counter unfair trade practices. For example, higher tariffs on goods from countries accused of currency manipulation or intellectual property theft, like China, could pressure them to adopt fairer trade policies. Critics' perspective, a global economy at risk. Critics, however, paint a more cautionary picture. Dr. Emily Carter, an economist at Harvard University, warns that the proposal could lead to inflation and economic instability. The global economy is deeply interconnected, she explains. Relying on tariffs as the primary source of federal revenue is not only risky, but also fundamentally misaligned with modern economic realities. Other experts highlight the potential for retaliatory tariffs from key trading partners, which could harm U.S. exporters. Agriculture, manufacturing, and technology sectors could take a significant hit, says Mark Tanaka, a trade policy analyst. If countries like China, Canada, or the EU impose countertariffs, it could trigger a chain reaction that destabilizes global trade. To better understand the potential impact of Trump's proposal, let's examine two possible scenarios. One optimistic and one cautionary. Optimistic scenario: a manufacturing renaissance. In this scenario, the elimination of federal income taxes leads to increased disposable income for American workers, fueling consumer spending. Tariffs make imported goods more expensive, encouraging consumers to buy American-made products. Domestic industries expand to meet demand, creating jobs and driving economic growth. Manufacturing hubs in the Midwest, long in decline, experience a resurgence. States like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania see new factories opening and unemployment rates dropping. The U.S. government successfully negotiates trade agreements that mitigate the risk of retaliation, maintaining healthy export levels. In a less favorable scenario, tariffs drive up the cost of imported goods, leading to inflation. Consumers face higher prices for essentials like electronics, clothing, and household items. Lower-income families, who spend a larger portion of their income on necessities, feel the brunt of these increases. Simultaneously, major trading partners impose retaliatory tariffs on American exports, leading to job losses in agriculture and manufacturing. Federal revenue from tariffs proves insufficient to replace income taxes, forcing cuts to essential programs like Social Security and Medicare. The U.S. economy contracts as global trade tensions escalate, with international markets becoming less accessible to American businesses. Implementing a tariff-based revenue system would require significant advancements in technology and infrastructure. Customs and border control systems would need to be modernized to handle the increased volume of tariff collection and enforcement. Artificial intelligence and automation could play a crucial role in streamlining customs operations. Automated systems could assess and process tariffs on imported goods more efficiently, reducing delays and minimizing human error. Blockchain for transparency. Some experts suggest using blockchain technology to track imports and ensure transparency in tariff collection. By providing a secure, tamper-proof record of transactions, blockchain could help prevent fraud and improve accountability. Public opinion on Trump's proposal remains deeply divided, reflecting broader cultural and political polarization in the United States. While many Americans welcome the idea of eliminating income taxes, others are wary of the potential economic risks. Grassroots support. Among Trump's base, the proposal has been met with overwhelming enthusiasm. Supporters view it as a bold move to empower individuals and reduce government overreach. "This is what we've been waiting for, a leader who puts Americans first," said Lisa Daniels, a small business owner from Texas. Growing concerns. Critics, however, have raised alarms about the proposal's impact on everyday Americans. Social media campaigns like #SaveOurServices and #TariffTrouble have gained traction, with users highlighting the potential for inflation and cuts to public programs. International reactions. Allies and adversaries. Trump's proposal has also drawn attention from global leaders, many of whom have expressed concerns about its potential impact on international trade. China's stance. China, one of the U.S.'s largest trading partners, has warned of retaliation if the U.S. imposes steep tariffs on its goods. "Protectionist policies will only harm global markets," said a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. "We will respond accordingly to safeguard our interests." European Union response. The European Union has also criticized the plan, with officials warning that it could lead to a breakdown in trade relations. The U.S. risks isolating itself in an increasingly interconnected global economy, said EU Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis. Conclusion. A gamble with high stakes. Donald Trump's proposal to eliminate federal income taxes and rely on tariffs represents one of the most radical fiscal policy ideas in modern American history. While it offers the promise of economic liberation for individuals, it also carries significant risks that could reshape the nation's economy and its role on the global stage. For supporters, the proposal is a bold vision of self-reliance and prosperity. For critics, it's a dangerous gamble that could destabilize the economy and harm vulnerable populations. As the nation debates this transformative idea, the stakes have never been higher.